Hi, my name is Brett. I'm here with top 8 competitor Jeremy Fehon from Eternal Weekend 2019. Jeremy, thanks for joining us.
Of course.
Could you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, your history with the game?
So my name is Jeremy Fehon. I'm from Philadelphia. Been playing Legacy since about 2012. I always grew up playing Magic, but I was a casual player. Played on and off kitchen table Magic. And then my brother and his friend Alvaro got back into Magic when Innistrad was the newest set, and through them I got back into it. So we started doing booster drafts of Innistrad, and that got us into playing Standard. And then once we realized how Standard works and how our cards would rotate and be worthless, we made the switch from Standard to Legacy. And I've been playing Legacy pretty much exclusively ever since.
7 years is a long time. That's pretty cool. So in your time, have you played a bunch of different decks, or have you always been like on a Delver style deck, or what's up with that?
So Delver is definitely my home. When I first started playing Legacy, I didn't want a net deck. I felt that this is pre-Deathrite Shaman, of course. So I felt that in a format that had so much depth and history, the world was your oyster. You could kind of play whatever you want. So the first deck I ever made was a homebrew. I loved playing this deck, and it was my Bant Cascade Stoneblade deck. And so you have your turn 1 Noble Hierarch into turn 2 Shardless Agent cascading into Stoneforge Mystic, and you felt like a card advantage god. And I was playing like Wasteland and Karakas, and I think I had Geist of St. Traft in the sideboard. So it was awesome. I absolutely loved that deck. It took losing with it to realize I shouldn't play that deck, but I learned a lot, and it was a great introduction to the format. So, it was the first deck I ever made. I always love it, but the deck that I really found my home in was Rogue Delver. So that was the first deck I ever actually finished and owned all the cards and didn't have to borrow any cards for. Was Rug.
Classic Rug. That's back with Nimble Mongoose and Stifle, huh?
Yeah. Good old Threshold.
So, Jeremy, we were taking a look before you joined us at your some of your tops, your top 8s, top 16s.
Yeah.
We found one from Star City Games. I think it was with Miracles.
Yes.
So it's a far cry from Rug Delver.
Yeah. So unfortunately, Deathrite Shaman was printed. That was a card, and it didn't take long to realize that Nimble Mongoose was no longer a viable option. So I just kept running into Bug Delver after Bug Delver after Bug Delver, and I got so tired of losing. I couldn't play Rug anymore. I just realized Rug was not where anybody wanted to be. There was no point. If you're going to play Delver, you had to play Bug. Eventually that morphed into 4-color, but I made the switch from Rug Delver to Miracles. One of the nice things about owning the blue Legacy duels is that you can kind of make that switch. So I saved up store credit to get Tundras, and I had some of the other cards already. I basically just needed the tops and the counterbalances. So I finished Miracles, basically because I play tested against my brother who played Miracles, and he's a very talented Miracles player. So he's through playing the Rug versus Miracles matchup, I learned how to play the deck and started playing that fairly heavily since Rug was no longer an option.
Well, can't really blame you. Top is it's a heck of a card.
I agree.
Shame about what happened to it, but that's neither here nor there.
I also agree.
So you said you're from Philadelphia, and the event was in Pittsburgh. So is it safe to assume you drove out?
Yeah, me and some good friends, drove out the night before, got a hotel room. It was a great time. It's always a good time when you get to travel with friends, and especially when you have a good group.
Having the right group is critical to enjoying your trip. So day 0, you drove out, got to your hotel room. Any kind of rituals you do, or play testing, or give us a quick snippet of what you did day 0 or Friday.
Day 0, Friday. I don't really have any rituals or anything like that. I guess you could call it a ritual of just going over the deck list with people that I trust their opinion and value it pretty highly. Just testing the waters of, should I play this card, or would this be a better choice, or what do you think the meta is going to be? What do you think I need to hedge against? Is this a better main deck choice or versus this, and where is that going to play? What are sideboarding options? What's coming in and out in this matchup, or what do I really think I want to be favored against going into the event? Stuff like that. Just those types of conversations. Unfortunately, due to being having a full-time job and a wife and a 1-year-old, that playtesting isn't really much of a thing. Although I try to get together with people as often as I can to jam games. Obviously, I go to F&M as often as I can. And although our meta isn't conducive to what a larger event looks like, just getting the games in, being comfortable with the deck, knowing your triggers, stuff like that, sideboarding, it's all good.
So, in your opinion, would you say quantity of games is better than quality of games? So, let me expand on that. You said you played F&M with kind of an interesting meta, right? Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But you still had to play 3 or 4 matches, which is 6, 8, 10 games, maybe
right.
more if you play in between. So just playing it just so you learn your deck more than like the meta, for instance. Is that as important as playing just quality games, like 5 games versus Rug and 5 games versus Ant, or 12 games with your 4-color list against whatever people have?
I definitely think there's merit to both.
Of course.
For me and my lifestyle, I will take whatever I can get. So 10 games against a random field, even if it's not what the meta might look like, is still good for me. It's about remembering your Delver triggers. It's about when you're playing Delver, it's a lot about tempo. Am I the aggressor here? Am I the control deck? Do I need to play it more mid-rangey? And getting kind of a feel for, okay, what should I be doing this turn, and what should I be doing the several turns after this? And then making sure you remember certain things. Like we talked about the Delver trigger, but do I need to brainstorm and set up that Delver trigger so that it'll flip? Is it better to get back Wasteland with Wrenn and 6 and continue the mana denial plan, or should I be getting back the Waterlogged Grove and drawing 2 cards a turn? When do I need to make that switch, and how often, or in what situations does that need to happen?
You made some really good points with that, and like you said, with practice you'll learn which ones matter the most or which choices to make. My favorite argument is always Delver Secrets trigger, brainstorm or not.
Yeah. Blind
flip, don't blind flip, and there's so many different factors to it. But not just the matchup, but like resources, cards in hand, turn, so many things.
Right. Like, am I saving this fetch land for my Delver trigger? Am I using it to scry, or do I want to fetch now to leave a different color mana up during my opponent's turn? And you need to weigh all those pros and cons. And luckily Delver can finish games quickly, but you want to be able to make those decisions as quickly as possible to keep the game moving, because you definitely don't want to go to time. So you need to be able to make those decisions very quickly, but you still need to make sure that it's the right decision. Gotcha,
exactly. So day 1, you had 2 buys.
Yeah, 2 buys. Felt nice. Got lunch, relaxed. Got to watch other people play some Magic, kind of see who was floating around the top tables. It was nice. It was nice having 2 buys.
2 buys is always great in any event, regardless of size.
I agree.
So, from my understanding, you don't have a round-by-round analysis of each match, but you have an approximation of what you've played against.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what I played against each round. It's kind of all jumbled together, but I do remember the 6 matches that I played in day 1.
Sure, so what archetypes did you see?
So I played against Elves, Bomberman, Temur Lands, Rug Delver, Blue-Red Delver, 4-color Delver.
That's not quite an eclectic field, but some of them are interesting, like Elves. I see you have 3 Wrenn and 6 here.
It definitely played to my advantage having Wrenn and 6. Just pinging off the little creatures is great. The Plague Engineers and the sideboard did great work there. I feel pretty good about my matchup against Elves, which is funny because Delver traditionally used to be really bad against Elves.
Yeah.
You'd have your Rough Tumbles in the board, or your Electrickery, or your Is It Staticaster, some way. Like, Elves was always on the radar, and even if you drew those sideboard options, it wasn't always a lock. you had like fork bolts in the main. Like those were pretty much for D&T and elves. Those 1 toughness creatures that could be a problem. But with Ren and 6, it's just a machine gun. It's just mows elves down.
Well, Ren and 6 definitely mows them down, but with the presence of Ren and 6, was your opponent playing any kind of special tech or anything interesting to deal with that? I mean, taking a bunch of X1s into a field of pingers, essentially, is brave.
I agree. No, my opponent was playing Elvish Archdruid, which I really like. So back in the day, people used to play Priesthood Titania.
Yeah.
And Elvish Archdruid has similar text to that card, but it's a 2/2 for 1 green, but it also is a Lord. So it pumps all of your elves.
So it's a 2/2, it's a Lord, and it's also a Priesthood Titania.
Right.
Was he playing 1, 2? Did you only see 1?
I only saw 1. I wouldn't be surprised if he had it in there just as a Green Sun Zenith target. So that definitely threw me off because it kind of negated the Ren and 6 pinging.
Yeah.
And post-board it made Plague Engineer harder to do its work.
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
I always wanted to be conscious of that card just to make sure that my Ren and 6 and my Plague Engineer could definitely do what they needed to do.
Of course.
The other tech that I saw out of him, which I actually really like in Elves, was Elder Scale Worm.
Elder Scale Worm. Give me a minute. I'm gonna pull that up.
Sure.
So it's a 7/7 for 7.
All the 7s.
It's got a green, 4. Jeez Louise. It's got 7 lines of text.
Yep.
So it's a 7/7 for 7. Green, 4. Trample. When Elder Scale Worm enters the battlefield, if your life total is less than 7, your life total becomes 7. So like you gain some life there. And then, as long as you have 7 or more life, damage that would reduce your life total to less than 7 reduces it to 7 instead. So you won that match, right?
Yes.
And you said that you saw the Elder Scale Worm. Did you thought seize it, or what's the deal with that?
So I was actually able to win while my opponent had it in play.
What?
With damage. So he had Elder Scale Worm and an army of elves. I had a Flip Delver, a Gurmag Angler, and a Tarmogoyf. I was able to land the first Plague Engineer, naming elves, wiping almost all of his little dudes except for a Nettle Sentinel. I drew the second Plague Engineer, named elves again, just to make sure that his Elvish Archer couldn't come down and then make it so for future elves would live. Got rid of his Nettle Sentinel. Basically, I wanted to make sure no elves could be on the table, so his Gaia's Cradles couldn't tap for mana. And that way there was no way for him to get to Craterhoof Behemoth mana, either with in hand or with Green Sun Zenith. So he basically was down to just the Elder Scale Worm. And he actually gained life when he played it, so he was at 7. And then he had a Sylvan Library in play. And he asked the judge, Judge, how does this work with Elder Scale Worm? And we talked about how on the original Sylvan Library it says damage. But on the new one in the Oracle text is pay for life. So it's a loss of life. It is not damage, so it will not trigger the Elder Scale Worm to bring you back up to 7.
That's really interesting. So just to confirm that I'm understanding this correctly, if you lose life, specifically loss of life, like with Library, like you said, you will not go back up to 7. You just stay low.
Right, and the wording on the Elder Scale Worm is very important there, where it says if your life total is 7 or more, damage that would reduce your life total to below 7 reduces it to 7 instead. So if you lose life, not via damage, to go below 7, then future damage does not bring you back up to 7.
Okay.
So we had this conversation about Sylvan Library. I confirmed that with the judge just to make sure I was clear about how it worked. And then my opponent didn't take any loss of life off of the library.
Okay.
And he proceeded to only draw 1 card per turn. So we were both top decking for several turns. I knew even if he had Founder Craterhoof, he didn't have the mana to cast it. And even if he did, I had plenty of toughness to block the trample damage. I believe I was at 12 at the time, and he was at obviously 7. I was basically drawing to my Submerge, because I knew if I could Submerge the Elder Scale Worm, then I could swing in for lethal.
Oh, yeah.
My opponent went to his turn, into his draw step, looked at the top 3 cards, clearly didn't like the top of his library. I don't know what he was searching for. He played a fetch land and then cracked the fetch to get Dryad Arbor. And he said, crack my fetch, I'll go to 7. And I said, you'll go to 6.
Uh-oh.
And then I was able to swing team the next turn and take the win. And we were, I believe, my turn of attacking was turn 0 in time. So I would have had to have found the submerge very quickly if he did not do that. But luckily, due to that play error, I was able to steal that win.
That's insane. Wow. Like, first off, Elder Scale.
Yeah, that's some spice. Serious spice.
That's cool in and of itself. And then be able to like capitalize on that play. I mean, you played your outs. You know you're looking for submerge, and then to know to have the foresight to ask the judge, like, understand what happened, because clearly your opponent either forgot or didn't understand it himself.
I'm not sure. I can't speak for him. I didn't catch his opinion about it afterwards. It definitely says on every fetchland, pay 1 life. That is a loss of life. It is not damage. I was stunned when he fetched.
Yeah, I believe it.
We had just talked about it with the judge, and he fetched anyway, and I was like, okay, I'll take it. That's not how I envisioned winning the game. Like I said, I was just trying to find the submerge. It was literally the only answer I had. I already had 2 bolts in my graveyard, so triple bolting wasn't an option. He clearly wasn't going to attack with it or block with it.
Of course not.
My Plague Engineers with Death Touch or anything like that. So, it was a very interesting match, and it was definitely one of the highlights of the day. Yeah. Just the situation of it all. Having an Elder Scale Worm on the table and winning with damage. I've never seen that before.
It's a little bit absurd. So normally I would ask about the Rug Lands matchup, but you went over that in detail with Card Titan the day of.
Yeah, what an experience. David Long is an exceptional player.
Yes, definitely.
That goes without saying. But, finishing the day 8-0, especially going into that round going, all right, well, I'm 7-0, and I'm about to be 7-1, and, I'll take that loss. It's fine. It's unfortunate, but it's such a bad matchup that I had already kind of assumed that I wasn't going to win.
Yeah.
That's not an attitude I definitely think that anybody should ever have going into a match, for sure. You need to be confident going in. But yeah, it was definitely surreal to get to hang out in the booth, do the commentary, talk about the match in depth. Everybody there was so nice, and it was just what an amazing experience. I loved it.
So day 1 was definitely jam-packed with new experiences, tight play, a little bit of luck,
definitely,
and of course, magic.
Of course.
Anything else interesting happened day 1, magic related or otherwise?
Other than everybody I played against was super nice, and I think that's something that is great about the Legacy scene, is just everyone enjoys this format so much. We're all there to have fun and play the game that we all love, and I'm always excited to sit down across from a new opponent, introduce myself, ask about how far they had to travel, what did they play that day, what do they think about what's happening with the game. So really just, my notable experience of the day was getting to meet everyone and getting to jam some games.
I mean, that's what it's about. But, Legacy is a community. I saw people from Europe when I was there. People traveling all around. I mean, you traveled 4 hours just across your own state.
Right.
Who knows people, I'm sure they came from, Denver, from...
Yeah, I talked to people from North Carolina, Virginia, Toronto, all over the place.
It's wonderful how it brings people together. But, all right, so that's the end of day 1. Day 1 ends. Not only are you, 8-0?
8-0.
8-0. You are King of the Hill.
King of the Hill.
You ended round 10 at the top of the standings. You were first place going into day 2.
Yes, round 8.
Round 8? Yeah, first place going into day 2. I mean, there wasn't a cut, but...
Yeah.
So, we were 8-0. Easy peasy. Day 2.
Day 2.
Tell us about day 2.
Really hoping I can just double ID into top 8. That's all that was on my mind. I was hoping that nobody wanted to play it out. I got really lucky. There was only one other 8-0, and we had talked about it the night before that there was talk of me being the only 8-0, and I knew that would actually hurt my chances for double drawing into the top 8. So I was really glad to see that Adam was also top 8. So
definitely.
We ID'd in round 9, and then I actually got paired against a friend of mine, Tom, who ended up taking down the entire event, and we ID'd in round 10. So he was able to squeak in at 7th seed, and I was able to get in there at 4th seed really safely. I could have played to try to be at a higher seed, but I'm definitely the type of person that will take the sure thing. I'm
Definitely.
4th seed is totally fine. I'll be on the play in the quarterfinals, and then we'll see what happens after that.
All right. So you ID'd twice in a row, but check the website. It says that Legacy Champ, the top 8 wasn't supposed to start till 4 o'clock. So day 2 was called for 9 a.m. So it's probably 11:30. So what else happened that day? Did you do practice? Did you go back to bed?
I wish I did either or both of those things. No, I re-sleeved my deck. That took forever. Shout out to Mapson for helping me with that. And then we went and got lunch at, I always forget the name of the place, but that taco place is awesome.
Taco place in Pittsburgh. I'm looking it up. It's Condado, I believe.
Condado, yeah, that place is amazing. And then I went back to talk to Mark Poole because I'm a huge fan of his. I had bought 2 prints the day before, and he had a raffle going so that every print that you bought, you got a ticket in the raffle, and I ended up winning the raffle. So I got to take a picture with him, and I got this altered, signed Alpha Island from Mark Poole, which was really sweet, which is just like another highlight to my weekend.
That's fantastic.
His artwork is just iconic, and it's a symbol of my childhood. So it's something that I'm just going to treasure forever.
So let me get this straight. You top 8'd Legacy Champs. You, in addition to top 8ing that, you also won a raffle.
Yes.
Day's going pretty well for you so far.
Yeah, I mean, great time. I can't complain. I really can't complain about anything. The whole weekend was just fantastic. I loved it. So I talked to Mark Poole for a little while, got my picture with him and everything, and then went over the top 8 with my friends, talking about sideboard options and basically coming up with a plan to take down the rest of the event.
Could you tell us about that? Yeah, so the 4 decks, if I recall correctly, or the 4 other decks, I should say. There was a Storm.
Mm-hmm.
There was Hex Steps with blue. There was Rug. And there's Blue-Red. And there was 2 different Blue-Red lists, and I believe 2 different Rug lists.
Yeah, and I think there was one other 4-color Delver player.
All right,
so including myself,
yes,
2 4-color Delvers, 2 Rug Delvers, 2 Blue-Red Delvers, Storm, and Depths.
Okay. Bug Depths, very
bug
important.
Depths, yes, Bug Depths. When I looked at the top 8 initially, I felt like I really wish I was the Depths player. As long as they can dodge the Storm player, it should be a nice top 8 for Depths.
Yeah.
Depths is traditionally a very good matchup against Rug. Unfortunately, he ended up losing to Storm. I don't know which round, which would have been nice for me if I was able to win my quarterfinals match.
Yeah.
I was on the play against Adam, who I ID'd with in round 9. Super nice guy. He was dressed as an elk all day one. He had antlers on. He was wearing a green shirt that said 3-3 on it. Awesome. In the spirit. So I was on the play in my quarterfinals match against Adam. I kept a hand that I still think was worth keeping. It was a 1-lander with Ponder. I don't remember exactly what else I had, but I know I had at least Daze or Force, and then either Bolt or Abrupt Decay in each of the hands that I kept. So I Ponder, find the second land, feeling good about that, and then he proceeded to Wasteland me once, and then I was stuck on 1 land the rest of the game and died.
So I'm sure this will be a big argument for days and weeks to come, and whenever this is discussed.
Right.
It'll always be, you have 1 land, you have a Ponder, you have a 2-drop threat,
mm-hmm.
you have other interaction, but obviously it's going to be a non-basic land.
Right.
You know, not keep. You have the interaction. You have the cantrip. You have the threat. What's not to like?
And being on the play means that my turn 1 cantrip isn't going to get dazed.
Yes.
So
huge.
unless he goes to like force my ponder, which I doubt he would ever do,
Yeah.
I know the ponder is going to resolve. So I get to look at least 3, if not 4 cards. So like in game 2, I kept a 1-lander. It was the Waterlogged Grove. I had a Goyf in my hand. I had Abrupt Decay in my hand. I think I had Daze and Force. So I pondered. I found a Tropical Island and a Delver and a Brainstorm. So I knew I could even draw the land and then either play the Goyf or play the Delver the next turn, and then the Delver would flip. So I drew off the Ponder, and then he wastelanded me on the first turn, even though I kept with Ponder, which I thought was interesting. It ended up playing to his advantage. So then I played the Tropical Island and played the Delver. Then, even though I flipped the Delver several turns later, he was able to bolt it, and I never drew another land for the rest of the game and died again. So both times I kept the 1-lander, pondered, found the second land. He wastelanded me once, and then I died with a Tarmogoyf in my hand with 1 land to play. And in that second game, I even had 2 Abrupt Decays, a Lightning Bolt, a Wrenn and 6, and then the only land I had in play was the Underground Sea. So I chose 4-color because of how well it could do against Rogue Delver with Abrupt Decay and stuff like that. He was on a Stifle version, which also didn't help.
That's good.
The deck, the mana base in the deck is definitely its weakest point. There were several times during the day where I had a 7-card hand that looked absolutely perfect, had like Delver, Daze, Lightning Bolt, Wasteland, and then the only colored mana source was the Badlands. So you run into those issues. That's just kind of the hurdle that you're saying that you're going to jump by choosing to play the deck.
So let's take a look at the list itself.
Okay.
So you're playing 5 Planeswalkers, but none of them are
5
Jace.
Planeswalkers, no Jace.
Not that Jace is a usual
Right.
suspect in normal decks, but
4 mana is just a little bit different
high
than everything else.
But you think Legacy, you think Jace the Mind Sculptor, but you do have Oko, Thief of Crowns.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, everyone's been clamoring for a ban in Standard, Modern, Pioneer, maybe. But in Legacy, that's what we really care about. So, how was he in your experience in these 8 rounds played using 2 buys?
Not great.
Not great.
Not great. I played him once in the Swiss, and he got countered.
Okay.
I didn't see him the rest of the time. Even boarded him out a lot. I think the only matches I kept him in against were Bomberman.
Okay.
And 4-color Delver.
Okay. I can see that.
And Teamer Lands.
Right.
So against those grindier matchups like Lands and Bomberman, he's really good. But against the Delver decks, he's not very good. And the whole point of this deck is to beat the other Delver decks. So I think having that 3-drop non-creature spell that, although can make threats, isn't the fastest clock, ended up hurting me. And I think he is ultimately better in the board of a Delver deck than he is in the main deck.
Interesting. That's a pretty hot take, pretty heavy take there. So when you said you didn't see him very often, were there games where you wished you could draw him? Like you're thinking, man, what do I need right now? Oh, Oko would be fantastic. Did that ever come up? Pretty
much just against lands. Just because he's a way to continue to make threats.
Yeah.
So that, like against David Long in round 8, he had double Mazavith in one game. So even though I had 3 creatures in play, I was only hitting for 3 each turn.
Yeah.
So having that Oko to make more Elks would have been really nice. But other than that, that's about it. And even against Bomberman, it's nice if he has Chalice in play and I have the other answer, but I also have Abrupt Decay in the main deck. So I don't really need that utility of getting rid of that type of a permanent.
Okay. Other classic 3-drops in this style deck, True Name Nemesis comes to mind. Mm-hmm. Would you consider True Name or another Planeswalker, or maybe Brazen Borrower? Sorry about that.
I really like Brazen Borrower. Having an answer to Merit Liege is I think, an important aspect of any deck. You need to have a plan for the 2020.
Definitely.
Brazen Borrower is a great answer to that. Bounce the token and then play your 3/1 flash with flying, which is really nice. It can also deal with things like Chalice. At least you can bounce it and then play your 1-drop, and then even if they replay Chalice, you had that time to get a cantrip off or bolt something important, or maybe land a Delver or something like that. But I like Brazen Borrower. I do also like True Name Nemesis. Fun fact, they're both rogues, so if you are trying to kill True Name Nemesis with Plague Engineer, named Rogue, not Merfolk.
That's good.
Just in case they're playing Brazen Borrower, that way you can hit both.
That's good to know. So Oko out. See ya.
Yeah, I think if I change the list around and I play it again, I would try to make space for him in the board if I could, because there's definitely times when you do want a Planeswalker like that with those abilities, but I don't think he is in the same plan that the main deck is trying to accomplish.
That's a good point. It's a antithetical of what your goal is.
Right.
Almost
and
against it.
that might just because I played against a lot of Delver. I played it 3 times in the Swiss and then once in the top 8. Had I beaten Adam, so had I gone all the way,
Sure.
I would have played against Delver 3 times in the top 8.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I played against Adam, then Adam beat me. He played against Blue-Red
Okay.
and lost, and then that Blue-Red player played Rug in the finals. So
Yeah.
I would have played 3 Delver mirrors.
Oko was not so good there.
And Oko was definitely not performing. So if Delver continues to see the amount of play that it's seeing, I wouldn't advise running it in the main deck. But again, if your local meta maybe has less Delver and more of those grindier matchups, like more lands or more Mentor,
Like Dead Guy Ale, maybe.
Sure, or Dead Guy Ale, then feel free to run the Okos. But I think for me, I would try to move them to the board. Although I have absolutely no idea what I would cut for them. The board is already as full as it can be right now.
I do have a few questions about the board, but we'll get to that in just a second. I just have one last question about your main deck.
Sure.
So you have 25 instants or sorceries.
Yes.
For Delver. Is that enough? Too much? Not enough?
I wish I had more. It was definitely rough. I got really lucky against David Long for multiple reasons. Like, multiple things went my way in that match. But one of the ones that didn't happen earlier in the day was my Delvers were blind flipping right after I played them for the most part. Definitely something that did not come up a lot in the other 7 rounds of Swiss before that. So I would play a Delver on turn 1, maybe even play a second one on turn 2. They wouldn't flip until turn 5.
Oh.
Something you never want to see as the Delver player.
Yeah. Interesting. And on the surface, 25 spells, that's almost half your deck.
Right.
But, in reality, when it comes down to it, cantrips and all that kinds of other stuff, planeswalkers, etc., Interesting. So, sideboard. So, something that I found very interesting, you have 4 direct hit cards for the graveyard, being Cage, Surgical, and Jukabog, and we could say 5 because crop rotation.
Honorary crop rotation.
Yeah.
So, I have done a lot of testing against Black-Red. That matchup can be very scary. They're really fast, and you need to have that low-cost answer to those decks. Although I didn't see Dredge or Hogak, Hogak is a huge worry of mine.
Okay.
9 times out of 10, you're not going to win game 1. You really need to win those sideboarded games.
Definitely.
So I actually had 2 Surgicals. I cut 1 for the Bajukabog.
Okay.
And I did that when I was running Rug Delver, but then transitioning it over to 4-color, it's even better because Bajukabog taps for black mana, and I'm actually running black spells now.
It actually matters now.
Yeah.
All right. 2 Thoughtseize. Plague Engineer seems pretty standard. Back to the crop rotation with the Crocus, pretty on par.
Again, answer to the 2020. Bajukabog can be good against lands, too. You can get the Life from the Loams out of there, or there's several other applications, like against Mentor. I will cut a Wasteland for the Bajukabog. Even if I'm not bringing the crop rotation, which I usually don't in that matchup. Wasteland's pretty dead in that matchup. There's not a lot of things to hit.
That's a good point.
So, and the only thing it really helps cast is Oko, Gurmag Angler, and Tarmogoyf. So obviously Bog coming into play tapped is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Especially if you're, you want to hit that threat or something like a Goi for an Oko. But being able to bog them to get Sword Splashers out of the graveyard as something that they can't hit with Snapcaster Mage anymore can make all the difference.
People don't really, I personally didn't even think about that. Now, it turns off Snapcaster Mage. If they're playing the Jeskai version, it can really hamper their Magmatic Sinkhole, because Red 6, I believe, is very important in that match. Well, really, any Planeswalker is going to be huge.
Right.
So you actually bring a really good point. And cutting the Wasteland, the Wasteland wouldn't be a land drop anyway,
right.
So
exactly.
Coming to play tapped is almost the same thing.
Right.
So moving down the list, I see we have a Veil of Summer. Veil of Summer is interesting. I say that because it looks like it's taking the spot of what would normally be another Pyroblaster Red Elemental Blast.
Yeah, I cut the second Pyroblast effect in Red Elemental Blast for the Veil. I've been talking a lot about it with a lot of different people, and I think it's just as good, if not better, but it has different applications.
Yeah.
So Storm was definitely a deck that was on my radar, and although Pyroblast is fine against Storm, Pyroblasting a Brainstorm is good, but that's as good as Pyroblast gets in that matchup.
Just about.
Whereas Veil of Summer can completely shut off their combo if they don't get it out of your hand and they try to go off, or it can save you from hand disruption while drawing a card. It's extremely versatile, and it's basically Cryptic Command for a single green. But then again, it also comes in other matchups, like against Depths, they run Abrupt Decay and a lot of hand disruption. So you can counter Abrupt Decay, draw a card, or counter your Duress, draw a card, and you can save your counter magic for a Crop Rotation or Vampire Hex Mage or whatever they're trying to do with their combo.
It's also good the mirror, the 4-color mirror as well.
Right, yeah. Again, just countering Abrupt Decay, which is normally uncounterable, is big. You don't have the Pyroblast effect, so you can't hit True Name Nemesis or Oko with it. So you do run that risk by cutting one of those for the Veil. It's
a give and take.
Right. I figured the sideboard has a lot of 1-ofs, as you can clearly see. Each thing has a different application, and it's just having more diversity, more answers to what you could possibly go up against.
That's what Legacy is about. It's arguably the most diverse format in Magic.
I agree.
You can play any deck. Pick a deck you like if you love it. Play it forever. Even if it's not the best deck at the moment, if you can play it well, you'll still do reasonably well.
Right.
And it's important to be prepared for just about everything. Like you said, you prepared for Hogak, talked about Reanimator and Storm, and yet you didn't see any of those. And of those 3 listed, also and Dredge, so 4 listed, only Storm was even close to your radar in the top 8.
Right.
So if you're prepared for these, and never came. But that's Legacy.
Yeah, definitely. I knew I was going to see a lot of Delver.
Yeah.
It ended up being 50% of my Swiss matches, and it would have been 100% of my top 8 matches. So no matter what deck you're playing, you need to have a Delver plan, whether it's 4-color Rug or blue-red. And that plan might differ from Delver deck to Delver deck.
Yeah.
But ultimately, you need to be able to either win the game, disrupt what they're doing by killing their creatures or stopping their planeswalkers, or maybe you're on the mana denial plan if you're also on a Delver deck, but you need to have a plan going in to any major event. How am I going to beat Delver of Secrets?
That's the name of the game for Legacy right now. For a few weeks, it was that stupid Merit Lage, or the Merit Large, if you will.
Merit Large.
Very big.
Depths is another deck that's really big. I made sure to look left and right at, every time I sat down to play a match.
Yeah.
And it was almost always Delver versus Depths, Depths versus Depths, or Delver versus Delver.
Oof.
Almost every single match next to me was one of those 3.
Yikes. To put it lightly.
Yeah, something might need to happen soon.
Maybe, but Legacy is pretty good about figuring itself out.
I agree.
Generally. Sideboard, Submerge is pretty self-explanatory in what it does.
Yeah, good against Elves, good against Depths, stuff like that. Good against Rug Delver or 4-color Delver. It being free is big. Yes. I've gone back and forth as to whether or not I would want to run a Vapor Snag, because then you could bring it in against decks that don't have forests. But ultimately, I think the free casting of Submerge is really good. Also, putting it on top of the library, like especially in response to a fetch or something like that, can be really good.
I mean, it's not a new play, but it is the hot play.
Right. I knew one of my rug opponents had Submerge in their hand, and I knew there was no way around it, and I had to fetch.
Okay.
And I had a Delver and a Tarmogoyf in play, and they
Okay.
actually had double Submerge.
No.
So they were able to hit both of my creatures and make me shuffle them away. Luckily, I was still able to win that game.
Didn't even need them.
Played Ren and 6 and then wastelanded them out of the game. So
That's all right. So maybe Ren and 6 is the problem. Maybe it's Delver.
I've often said that Ren and 6 might be the problem.
But that's neither here nor there. That's a different video. That'll be a different video. Hydroblast, again, very self-explanatory in what it does.
Ren and 6.
Ren and 6.
Ren and 6. Pretty much exclusively there for Ren and 6.
I don't know. Fire Blast scares me a little bit too.
Sure. Yeah, I mean,
it's not what we're thinking about. We're thinking about Ren and 6.
Right. You'll counter a Lightning Bolt, maybe a Past in Flames if you're lucky, but I don't even know if I would bring that in against Storm. It really depends on how many cards I would want to take out.
Gotcha. And then finally, the classic rug staple on the sideboard, almost always. Can't imagine it not being there.
Ancient Grudge.
Ancient Grudge.
Great card. Really good against Bomberman. There aren't a ton of Stoneblade decks running around anymore, but just in case it's there. Great catch-all, getting to kill two things. Chalice is a huge problem. It's less of a problem for 4-color than it is for, say, Stifle version of Rug, or for even blue-red, depending on Chain Lightning or whatever you're running in that version. But it can still be annoying. Not being able to play your cantrips or play your Delvers or play your bolts can be a serious issue and slow down your game plan. So having an Ancient Grudge right there, super good. Sometimes you blow something up, but you still have it in the graveyard ready to go, and you get to hit something else.
It's just a good card.
It's just a great card. Who knew Flashback?
Man, a 2-for-1, really?
Yeah.
Powerful.
And in a deck where you're trying to get 1-for-1s while having more efficient threats, you'll take a free 2-for-1 every now and again.
Definitely. So that's 4-color Delver. That's the deck. That's the event. To wrap it up, so would you say that you have a large collection of decks to choose from, a large stable?
I do. I've been fortunate enough to pick up a lot of cards over my career, and I could pretty much play whatever I want. Also, I have a lot of friends who have a lot of decks and cards that they could loan or decks that they could loan. So I could play pretty much anything in the format, but I think that Delver is in such a good position right now.
Okay.
And again, I just chose 4-color to try to beat Rug Delver, because Rug Delver definitely, to me, seems like the biggest deck right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. Especially with Ren and 6, just focusing more on the denial plan. So that's I think, despite it not working out in practice in the top 8,
right.
On paper, it's a very, very heads-up meta call, very solid choice. For those of us who are trying to kind of figure out, feel our way through the Legacy format, maybe we've picked an off-brand, so to speak, Legacy deck, like an odd combo or a mid-range deck. What would you recommend to try and figure out a deck that you would like?
So first I would say is go to your local store, find out if people are playing Legacy there.
Ooh, good one.
Make friends with them, get to know them, see if they'll loan you decks or cards, and play the field.
Yeah.
Kind of figure out what you like to play. Once you know what style you want to play, then you can kind of hone in on a deck, because obviously Legacy is an expensive format. You shouldn't pick a deck, spend all that money, and then realize, oh, this deck's not good, or I don't like playing it, or both. Then you're just going to be out a lot of money. So the biggest advice I can give is try a lot of things out, whether it's borrowing decks, cockatrice, whatever. There's several sites for Magic Online where you can rent decks.
Yeah.
There are ways to test stuff out. What I would say is, if you're going to play Legacy, you don't know what you want to play, definitely work towards building up your collection of blue duels, blue fetches, and getting a playset of Force of Will. If you have Trops, Volks, Seas, or Tundras, with blue fetches and forces, there's a lot of ways that you can go with that.
Yeah.
So you could play. There's 3 different Delver decks. Maybe you want to lean towards more combo and play like Sneak and Show or Ad Nauseam Tendrils, or maybe you want to go more control and play Mentor or 4-color control. There's a lot of different ways you can go, but they all have blue duels, blue fetches, and except for Storm, Force of Will in common. Pick up a playset of Brainstorms and Ponders, stuff like that. So, if you look at my deck even, there's a lot of commons and uncommons in this list. Spell Pierce, Lightning Bolt, Gurmag Angler, Daze, Ponder, Brainstorm. Those are the types of cards you can pick up afterwards. But the main set is Force of Wills, blue duels, blue fetches. You cannot go wrong picking those up.
I mean, can't argue with that. You bring up some good points, and just like in life, it's all about the real estate.
Right, and if it helps, think of it as an investment, and it's probably better to pick them up now, especially the duels, than waiting until later. I remember, I bought an Underground Sea for 120 near mint when I first started playing Legacy.
Goodness.
And I wish I had bought more, because the store I was playing at the time had several for that price range, but I only bought one.
Yeah, hindsight's
2020. So if you're thinking about getting into the format, the sooner the better. One of my goals has been to get rid of everything that I'm not going to play. I have a foil cube that I want to get rid of. I have modern cards I want to get rid of. I don't want to play those formats. I don't use my cube enough. I'd rather just invest in legacy staples, especially reserve list staples. Like, even if it's kind of an obscure card, I might want to play with it someday, and it's going to be cheaper to get it now than to wait.
If time tells us anything, it's definitely buy now.
Right.
As we wind down the interview, one last piece I'd like to do. It's called Props and Slops. If you're not familiar with that, it's an old MTG article thing. At the end of each article or tournament report, the writer would give props, things they liked or enjoyed, to people or to an event or to cards. Like, it's like saying something nice about something that happened or someone or that kind of thing. And then slops were things you wish happened differently, or maybe somebody made a play mistake, you wanted to point it out to them. Really anything, props, just good things, slops, bad things, but they're generally, either way, worthy of note.
Yeah, I wish I could remember all my opponents' names. I'm notoriously horrible for remembering everyone's names, but one of my Swiss opponents from day one came up to me during day 2 and said, like, "Oh, I heard you top-aided. That's so awesome. Congratulations." And he was just so nice. He was from North Carolina. We had a great talk about how much I love North Carolina. But just having your opponent, someone you beat, come up to you and say, "Congratulations, that's really awesome. I'm rooting for you." Anything along the line. Again, that's just the legacy community. Love of the game. That's just good sportsmanship. And I love that. I absolutely love that about the community. Nobody I played against was salty or complained. David Long in the last round was so nice after our match. Just getting to hang out with the people in the booth. Everybody there was so nice. Slops. I made play mistakes. I went back and watched my interview / commentary on my match, and then I even realized, I shouldn't have done that, or I should have done this slightly differently. So I know I made a lot of play errors, and I'm sure during my other rounds that weren't televised, I made play mistakes. So always go back and analyze your own play. So I was lucky enough to get to watch myself on camera again. So, maybe record your practice matches and rewatch them, kind of like how football teams record their games and stuff like that. It's probably hard to overanalyze a match, so learn from your mistakes.
Learn from your mistakes. A classic age-old adage.
Oh, and don't fetch when you have Elder Scale Worm in play.
Don't fetch Elder Scale Worm in play, Jeremy 2019. Well, Jeremy, thank you for taking the time to talk to us, discuss your deck, lay it out for us. Hope to see you again in Top 8 soon, whether it's a GP, Eternal Weekend, or whatever else it may be, maybe F&M Draft Top 8. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't draft much.
With these lands, I can understand why.
Fair.
All right, and thank you, listener, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, y'all have a good night.